when you leave space for new possibilities do emerge. For too long, we've been led to believe that only two types of people can have an extraordinary creative career: creative genius and people who hustle so hard that they're working all the time. Here on the Everyday Talent Podcast, we are shattering that myth. This podcast is built on one truth, which is every one of us can have an extraordinary creative career. The way to get there is not by sacrificing all of ourselves to our work, but rather embracing our authentic selves and carve out unique paths to a fulfilling and joyful creative life. Hello and welcome. My name is Betty. I'm a creative and a coach for creators. I've coached photographers, filmmakers, visual artists, arts consultants, and arts leaders to make intentional career shifts and build thriving independent practices. This podcast is for you if you're looking to cut through the noise of what you should be doing in your creative career and figure out what actually works and matters for you. Before we begin, I want to remind you to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your platform of choice. Leave us a rating and review and share this podcast on your social so that more amazing creatives out there can find out about this podcast and feel seen. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Talent Podcast. I'm your host, Betty. So today is a solo episode. A solo episode, if you've been following this podcast for a while, or if you're new here, I just want to give you the context, is when I share some of my personal reflections from my own experience running my creative career and also experience in conversations, in coaching conversations with my clients, or just in conversations with my creative friends. And I usually mix some personal experience and some reflections or advice or coaching questions related to that topic. And today's topic is how to make major life decisions amidst running a creative business. And to tackle this topic, of course, I have some major life decisions made recently. And I haven't really made an announcement about this until up to now. And the news that I'm going to share is that I'm getting married. Yes, I'm making a major life step in my life and in my partner's life. And up to this point, I really haven't really announced it publicly. Of course, close families and friends know. And by the time you listen to this podcast, I will already be married. Yeah, that's actually, the release date is actually one day after my ceremony. So very happy to be sharing with you this news on here. And this whole year, we actually make kind of the decision in early spring. So for the past year, I've been planning my ceremony. We are opting for something very, very low key. And here's the second announcement. As part of like my partner and my plan to step into a new chapter in our life, we also decided that this coming winter, so December 2023 to March 2024, we'll be traveling to Asia. And part of it is our honeymoon, part of it is a little bit of celebration with family, but also we'll be trying working remotely in escaping the Toronto winter, as you will. That's not a light decision. And my partner as well been planning this steps since the day that we make up our mind. And we are very, very excited. So these two decisions combined, as you can imagine, have been informing a lot of my actions, my thoughts, and my planning in the past year. And today I'm going to talk about, I'll take you behind the scene, how I'm planning for those two major, one is a major transition in life, but the other is a major step to plan for in running my creative business and career that I decided to work remotely, essentially up to 4 months, but maybe even longer if you want to, in Asia. So couple areas that I've been thinking through planning this and as well my partner are capacity, budget, vision that we hold for our life, and vision that we hold for our own career, and as well inner trust. And I'm going to go through each one of them. And I hope, like, me sharing this, I know all of you really take like care in like supporting me and supporting this podcast. But I also will hope that me sharing this personal, very personal news and very personal development, it's not just like about like sharing some updates. That's nice as well. But I know that a lot of us, when we are managing our creative career, one of the things that we bump into, especially when we have long view in our creative practice, is that how do I plan for the long term, or that seasons of life are bound to change. Nothing is ever stable anymore. And so, how can we proactively choose something that we desire in our life and prioritize our life and still thrive in our creative practice? I think that's at the heart of where we think about making major life decisions while running our creative career or independent practice. And so, when I was making this decision, maybe let's take a step back to that moment that uh, my partner and I make a decision to get married. And also, immediately, what influenced our career the most is like essentially working remotely and taking that time off, or as I would delve into, we're still going to work when we are away. And how does that look like? To be honest, when we make the decision, it was very much of a gut decision. Some of you know that last year, in the first year of running my business full time, I gave myself the gift to travel to two different continents, multiple different countries, and like of something like 7 cities in December. And some of you know, but quickly recap, like we had a very uneventful trip. I had some visa issue going to India, and it didn't end up to going to India to attending my friend's wedding. And we actually, my partner and I, was kind of somewhat forced to part our ways middle of the trip, and we eventually make it to Japan individually, and then we united again and had an amazing time there. And after that trip, we, even though it was very uneventful, we just kind of look at each other and we're like, after the pandemic, similar to a lot of other people, first, we really miss travel. Second, coming from Asia, we really miss Asia. And coming back to Toronto in January was very hard. It was a lot of emotional brew, and seeing the winter, for those of you who don't know, Toronto winter can be quite harsh. And for me, I had always grew up as a city girl, and coming back to the suburbs was a little bit depressing. And so earlier on, like as we were planning for our year, we already like kind of had an inch feeling that we want to go back to Asia. And also, since the pandemic, around us, there have been people, friends, or consultant friends, or colleagues who also try similar things of working remotely. And my partner and I look at each other and said, we chose this life of working for ourselves because we prioritize and value flexibility so much. That's one of the things that you've been hearing me saying. I choose to run my multifaceted creative practice because I prioritize flexibility in terms of time, but also in terms of location. And so, why don't we really celebrate that and try working remotely? Uh, and in that sense, it means that even though I have clients all over the world, but most of my clients are still kind of residing in Canada or in North America. So going to Asia would be a different time zone, and definitely like an adjustment. It also very excites us to think about that prospect. And alongside with that, we had a conversation about moving on to the next stage in our life and aka getting married. And when is a better timing to do that step of like exploring the world than this leveraging this very moment? Both my partner and I really didn't want a big fanfare in having the traditional wedding or like celebrating with like hundreds of people that we don't even, or we are not even that close. So anyway, we decided to not do a wedding altogether and go travel. So that was how the decision was made. Since the decision was made on, a very mutually agreeable timeline, and also with impulse and excitement and gut feeling, both of us kind of went off and started planning our work. How does that look like? And so that brings me to the first factor that I've been putting a lot of thinking in, which is capacity. Right now, I am mostly working for 4.5 days in my week. Sometimes I do make exceptions to work a little bit in the evening or even the weekend, especially when a client like a coaching client needs to meet outside regular work hours. And so thinking about going to Asia, and we are first going to Japan and then Taiwan, is going to be interesting because the time zone is like a 12-hour direct difference. And so, in thinking of that, how can we kind of leave space for exploration and travel, and at the same time continue to pursue our goals in our career? Is the question that's in front of me and my partner. And one of the things that I learned is, and I coach my clients on, is that when you leave space for new possibilities do emerge. And here I'm going to kind of derail and share a little bit of other updates and or other decision that I make recently regarding my business. And I promise it's related to this like overarching topic about capacity. So as some of you might remember, earlier in the summer, I started promoting a group coaching program, the Conscious Creative Group Coaching Program. And I had everything ready to go. I did the curriculum. I had a timeline set. I had some interested potential clients to book calls with me. And I remember as I was like getting close to like launching, I already felt that this like above the cup feeling. What I mean by that is that I always say that like when you assess your capacity, you want to kind of get a feeling of like if you're a cup, is the water just at the right amount for you to take a sip, or is the water already above like the safety line, and if you don't take a sip, it's going to spill. And very viscerally, I felt that above the cup feeling, above the safety line feeling for like 2 or 3 weeks. And as I was proceeding to talk to the people that were interested or even like ready to sign up, I felt that feeling even more. And I think part of it was that like originally I wanted to do this group coaching program because I had a big should in my mind. When we talk about like, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing this, I felt that it was like at the time in my business that I should be doing a group coaching program, or I should try to launch this before I have so much life change next year and go away to travel. And in conversations with clients, and I want to thank specifically a couple of people who who you are, that you talk to me throughout this process of like planning for the group coaching program. I just felt that there was kind of something not clicking. Not just for like, there were some things I still need to work out in terms of the design of the program, but also like for me, in terms of when I look ahead in the fall, getting married, planning for travel, a lot, or also other projects ongoing, I could not see myself taking on this program in a way that I can do full justice to the client. And so it took a lot of grief and pain because it's never easy to have roll out something, announce something, and then feeling that I'm quitting. But in trusting that inner voice and gut, I decided to pull the program. And I went back to each of the clients that were interested and had a chat with them individually again and apologized. It took about like kind of 10 days of feeling really, really bad about making that decision, but also knowing that I made the like right decision for my clients and myself. And immediately after that, like, initial not so pleasant feeling, I felt so much lighter. And a couple interesting things happened after that. Because I got this space, I immediately felt like more spacious in my capacity. I got this space in my capacity, and some exciting new development happened. Around that same time, I was informed that the podcast got nominated for an award for the Asian American Podcasters Association, and I decided that I could like take an impromptu travel to New York and to attend the ceremony. And I thought if I had like actually went through with the group program, this would be like the busiest time to try to launch the program, and I probably wouldn't have the space. Like, what do you know? Like, for most of you, you already seen on Instagram that after I went to New York, I did get the award for the podcast. It became kind of the most amazing end of summer trip. So on the personal front, it gave me kind of that space, gave me joy, and the capacity to say like I'm improvised. Like I'm just going to make a quick decision to decide to travel, make a quick trip. On the professional front, like since letting go of the group program, there are a couple individual new clients that got book calls with me and signed up. And at the same time, this is not like I can't disclose this announcement yet, but there's another kind of very interesting like new opportunity that came through with my coaching business. You'll hear more about that later in a year as we firm up the details. But all of this make me kind of go a pause. It's like, wow, this is another instant where when you make space for or letting go something that doesn't serve yourself and the people that you serve, something new emerges. And it's always takes a bit of more of being in really honest with yourself. Is this what makes your heart sing? Is this what going to contribute like actually positively to everybody involved in this project? Or are we just doing this because there's a lot of should? So that's my lesson in there in terms of capacity. So that was a major derail from the main story, but I hope that like I couldn't I've made the case to you about what informs my decision in terms of when I plan for the capacity is that as I go travel, I'm really going to take a back to basic approach with my capacity. I've been consciously uh, deciding what to say yes and what to say no for projects that now are beating into 2014, the first quarter. And I am very aware that by saying no to certain things, it will immediately induce that feeling of uncertainty because it's never like you're never certain as you're on your own, as those of you who run your independent things, you're never certain when you say no to something other things will come up and you have bills to pay and you've got like life to sustain. But I'm consciously choosing to trust that when I say no to something, something new will emerge. And when part of this trip of going to Asia, even though it's a life decision, but it's also got a professional edge to it, I'm curious to talk to creators in Asia when I'm there and meet people and explore like what the coaching landscape is like in there. So it is critically important both on the business side and the personal front that I leave capacity for that. So always to say, I will still be coaching. I still have one or two very central consulting clients, but I think that my capacity will come from like 4.5 days, 4 days working to probably no more than 3 days of working. And I'm also actively looking to rearrange of like, in the spirit of asking for help, I'm also actively looking like what part of my work can be delegated, and there will be some changes in terms of my like how I do the work. So all of these are informed by the motivation to travel, but also motivation to leave the space for new possibility. And for the last little while, as you notice, as I'm like deep in the planning mode for our civic ceremony, and I've also got a couple of creative film grants essentially due in like October, I've been hermiting for quite a while. And that's the other thing that I want to share with you is that as we welcome the seasons of change in our life, it's okay that to go off social media for a while. And as I say that, I almost be like, wow, I can't believe I'm like even giving that as an advice because like that would be so intuitive. But I know for a lot of us who like our main avenue of like marketing our service, marketing our creative practice is through social media. We're so guilty when we are not showing up on social. It's completely okay, especially for those of us who are multifaceted. When your like energy is channeled one lane, it might not be the energy that is outward facing. And what I mean by that is like, especially you're doing like some deep like writing work, visual arts work, or just like any kind of work that takes you to be in solitude and in a deep engagement with your work. I get it. It's not really a time for you to then show up on social and have this like outward facing energy. And I just want to put a soft reminder there that it's completely okay to do that. For myself, I've been in this hermit mode for a month now. I'm pretty sure I'm like on the edge of like also ready to come out. And that's why I kick off, like, I share this big announcement in this podcast and want to reconnect with you in this one on one format. So that was capacity. Let's move on to the second bucket, which is budget. I really want to touch on this topic and be very honest with it because it's one of those topics that like we often feel like, ooh, like yeah, we don't talk about money. But yes, let's talk about money. Well, as my partners and I think about our travel, our ambitious plan, part of actually going to travel is thinking about cost saving from what a traditional wedding would take. And that both my partner and I are people who really care about the ROI, return on investment of our money. And it doesn't mean like return on investment in money making more money. It just means that are we getting a really good experience by what we investing in that experience? So in terms of that, we find that going to travel and then have like a small intimate celebration with our closest family and friends is probably going to be so much better than like having a big fanfare and us not even getting to talk to most of the people at a big wedding. So that's that. But you probably, as throughout this episode, you're probably thinking, wait, so like going to travel to Asia, that's a lot of cost. Yes, but also one of the consideration we have is that we noticed that living costs in North America actually has significantly increased since the pandemic. And we were kind of blown away during our travel last time how like reasonable in comparison. Like I'm not going to say like that it's like completely not like affordable, but in comparison, there's a level of like again, the ROI is much higher when we were traveling in Asia in terms of experience. So we are very cost conscious that way. But also, what it means for our own personal planning and professional planning is that we must save some money from the money that we make this year. And what it took very transparently was that since we started planning this trip, I had a budget. And this is where I really like kind of want to connect the dots of today's topic to some of the things I talked about before. It's where like, a lot of times in coaching rooms or in conversation with friends, when especially in the creative industry, we've been working in scarcity mindset for so long or survival mode that it's very induce a bad feeling or like a feeling of fear when we try to set a personal budget because it feels like what we make is not enough to cover that. And in my one-on-one coaching program, one of the key exercise, if the topic of money does come up, is to envision what does a holistically rich life for the client looks like. And by that, I mean like you're rich not just by the amount of money you make, that is a big factor, but also like what's the quality of life that you want to afford. Because after all, if you are saying you're not making enough, then what is enough? Like if you don't have a vision of that, we can't work. Like we're working from no concrete goals. So I coach people on that and I carry that philosophy in my own planning, which is, so what would be like a nice travel look like and how much would that cost? And backcasting from that, how much do we need to save them? So I did a forecasting of if we were to work without thinking how much like money we bring in from our work, like from if we were to go travel those months in Asia, what exactly would it cost? And this is where I show my film producer kind of hat. My trick of setting a budget is always like set an okay goal, like kind of bare minimum goal. This is the bare minimum that we need in order to make this idea viable. And the second column, I have like a stretch goal. What would be kind of like really nice travel, a little bit of luxury in there, or like a hotel that we really want to go, the restaurants that we really want to go. What would that look like? So I pretty much had a number in hand by June 2023, so a couple months ago. And I went to talk to my partner. These are the amount that we would, if we were to think that we don't work at all next, like the beginning of next year, for the first 4 months, this is the amount of like extra money that we need to make from this year to cover the cost of our travel. And since then, both of us been working towards that goal. And I'm happy to share that I think I'm like very, very close to saving that extra cost money for next year. And especially considering like next year, I'm still going to be coaching for overseas, and that's my kind of big trial of like coaching remotely. I think that we are doing pretty well on track with our goal. And I really, really, again, you know, want to stress the importance of like if we didn't have that level of clarity, how much actually this will cost in terms of everything from the getting married to travel, we would have been like aimless wanderers this whole year and not being able to implement that kind of life vision that we actually have. So as you are planning for a major life decision, consider the money factor. And as much as I know that it like sometimes can be anxiety inducing to sit down and do the exercise, also like know that once you do it, it's going to make you feel so much better. And I really, really stress the importance of like making a minimum viable okay budget, because one of the things that I see when I ask people to make their budget sometimes is that they immediately go for like the pie in the sky or the most like unattainable thing that they ever wanted. It's okay to have that. I'm not trying to deny or say that like ditch that stuff that you don't need. It's okay to have those pie in the sky goal, put it in the stretch goal column, but also have like a minimum viable goal. And your real goal is probably somewhere in between your minimum viable goal budget and your stretch goal budget. All right. If you're interested in this topic, also shoot me a message. I have so many feel like I love making budgets. That's the side of me that you might not know if you just encounter me as a coach or a filmmaker. But I love this stuff. So I might make another episode about this if this gets a lot of traction. So definitely let me know if you appreciate this section or not. Alrighty, moving on to, I'm going to combine the last two components, vision and inner trust. As we make the major life decisions, what is the vision that we hold for our career? How does that integrate with our personal decisions? And more, I really want to encourage us to shatter that wall between life and work. We still like hear the lexicon like work-life balance, and I'm not trying to like throw it away or criticize it. I think like I understand it becomes like a normalized term that people use, but implied in that phrase is that work and life are separated. And this is the moment that I know some people would say that I do want my work and life separated. And that's all good, like the compartmentalization. I don't mean it in that sense that they are not separated. I just mean that when we're planning for work and life, we shouldn't be that I'm going to plan for this for my life and I'm going to plan for this for my work. Because what happens when we think like that is usually life comes second. 100%, because if you have work have like this time requirement, it requires me to be at home from this hour and that hour, so sorry honey, I can't make to your important day, or I can't show up. Those of you who have child, I can't show up for like these kind of important occasions at school for the child. So life usually kind of work around work, or at least like one person in the household would need to like make those sacrifice. So I much rather advocate for a version of planning where you're integrating that. Like, so what are the life priorities and what are the work priorities, and how like listing all of those out and think about them not as like separating, but how can they work together. And for me, I've always like since the day one I found it like the coaching practice alongside my consulting and filmmaking, I always have the desire that the coaching practice service can serve creatives internationally. How that would happen? Like one might say that would be so easy. Like we live in the world of like no, like there's really no boundary. That's true. And I've gotten clients internationally, but majority, as I said earlier in this episode, majority of my clients are still based in North America. And I think part of it is because I also like for majority of my career have been working in North America. So I know the pain points and the context of North American clients the best. And for me, it would be like ingenuine if I don't kind of like put myself in an international context and just say that I want to serve international clients. So this decision of traveling is very much both a life and a work decision in that way. It satisfies multiple priorities. And having that vision is was like kind of informing or like giving me the feel to work towards that. And especially because it's an integrated vision with both life excitement and work excitement. And here's where like the real life stuff comes in. Since making this decision, and I've like shout out to my partner for like 100% behind this decision, and he's actually the one who has been like very at ease. I shouldn't say that he's 100% at ease, he's a human too, but like he doesn't appear to be as like nervous as I am. Since making the decision, I'm actually pretty nervous about the nitty gritty. Sometimes I would have some episode where I go like, "Oh, what's that? How's that gonna work? Or how's that gonna like?" I have like some spikes of emotion, of like nerves. But every time that both of us kind of reach deep down in terms of our like gut feeling and our vision, we know that this will be the right decision and probably one of the best decisions that we've made. So having that vision and inner trust that things will work out, even though when we are showing up to every day as full humans with our anxieties and uncertainty, is okay. That's been what my biggest lesson is in this planning process, is that some days when my anxiety spike when we are doing planning, I understand that this feeling is valid in this moment, but it also shall pass because I know what's in the horizon, and I know that vision holds true for both of us. So I think when we talk about capacity and budget, those are usually the how this thing are going to happen. What does it take? Really, it comes down to the why. Why does this major life decision matter in the biggest scheme of our life and the biggest scheme of our vision for our career? So the vision combined with the inner trust is very, very critical for supporting us when we go through this major transition. So that brings me to kind of wrap up today's episode. And I hope that like in sharing my journey, you're also taking away some sparks in thinking about your life decision, or whether it's upcoming, you're experiencing it real time right now. And I also want to plant a seed here. As some of you know, every year would at the end of the year or beginning of the year, I release a planner tool, and that to support people to plan intentionally for their year. And as you're listening to this episode, what comes to mind when you think about planning for the upcoming year? What's important to you? What has worked and what hasn't worked? I want to hear all about them. You can message me on my social media or just shoot me an email. I would love to gather some feedback as I think about this upcoming year's planner tool to support you in your journey. And as I mentioned in the episode, coaching is not going away. There's probably going to be some limited slots. At this very moment, I'm probably going to only open up 1 or 2 slots in like the coming month. But stay tuned. And also, you can always still book a call. And if we're not working now, I will for sure have capacity open up in the coming months. I look forward to serve my clients and you oversee, and take you also on a adventure, because I'm sure I will have some exciting guests and also my own reflection share with you when I am traveling and making this adventure of of my life, so forth. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope this episode gives you some juice as you go forward to plan for the rest of your year or your new year. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe to the podcast on any podcast platform that you listen to, and we are also on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can watch the interviews and episode. And I really encourage you to share the episode or this podcast with your friend. One of the things that I found is that many of my audience in this podcast write to me or connect with me after and say that they feel so seen because they are working creatives, and so many stories out there sometimes neglect that messy middle that they're experiencing. So I really hope with your help, we can spread this podcast to more creatives so that they feel seen. May we all be intentional in integrating our life and creative career vision. I will see you on the next episode.